I've been working at the QUIET Motel for about 3 years now. It's a small place, tucked away on the outskirts of town, with only 20 rooms. The building itself is old, probably from the 1960s, with faded wood paneling and a neon sign that flickers more often than it shines. The parking lot is cracked and overgrown, with weeds pushing through the asphalt. Not much happens here, which is fine by me. I'm not one for excitement. I took the job right after graduating from community college. It wasn't my dream career, but it paid the bills and gave me plenty of time to read or browse the internet during the slow nights. Plus, the manager seemed nice enough during the interview, even if he was a bit odd. He kept emphasizing how important guest privacy was and how I should never disturb the occupants unless it was an absolute emergency. The weird thing is, even though our rooms are always booked solid, it's eerily quiet. I mean, dead silent. No TV noise, no conversations, not even footsteps. At first, I thought maybe the walls were just really well insulated. But after a while, the silence started to feel off. It's not just the lack of noise from the rooms either. There's no sound of cars pulling in or out of the parking lot, no slamming doors, no rolling suitcases. It's like the whole place is in a bubble, cut off from the rest of the world. I remember my first night shift like it was yesterday. I was nervous, fumbling with my new uniform. A polyester polo shirt with the motel logo and khaki pants that were a size too big. The manager gave me a quick tour of the front desk area, showing me how to use the ancient computer system and where the emergency contact numbers were posted. He assured me it would be easy, said most nights nothing happens at all. He wasn't wrong. That first night, I sat at the front desk all night, and not a single guest came by. No calls, no requests, nothing. Just silence. I tried to stay alert, reading a book and occasionally glancing at the security monitors. But the screens just showed empty hallways and a vacant parking lot. By the time my shift ended at 6 a.m., I was both relieved and confused. How could a fully booked motel be so quiet? As the weeks went by, I started to notice other strange things. The cleaning staff, for instance. There were only 2 of them, an older woman named Maria and a young guy named Jake. They'd arrive every morning at 9 a.m., pushing their carts loaded with cleaning supplies. But I never actually saw them clean anything. They'd go into the rooms, stay for about 10 minutes each, then come out. No vacuum noise, no smell of cleaning products. And strangest of all, no dirty linens or trash ever came out of those rooms. I tried to strike up conversations with Maria and Jake, but they were always in a hurry, barely acknowledging me as they rushed through their rounds. Once, I managed to ask Maria if she ever saw any of the guests. She just gave me a blank look and muttered something about respecting privacy before hurrying away. The parking lot was another mystery. Always empty, no matter the time of day or night. I couldn't figure out how guests were arriving or leaving without cars. We're not exactly in a pedestrian-friendly area, being on the outskirts of town with no public transportation nearby. I thought maybe they were all using taxis or ride-sharing services, but I never saw those either. I tried to brush it off. Maybe our guests were just really quiet, really clean people who preferred to walk or had some secret way of coming and going. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The whole situation felt like a puzzle with missing pieces, and the more I thought about it, the more unsettled I felt. One night, about 6 months into the job, I decided to investigate. I'd been stewing in my curiosity and unease for months, and I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. I waited until 3 a.m., when the night was at its quietest. The air conditioner hummed softly, and the old fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. My palms were sweaty as I grabbed the master key from its hook behind the desk. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I was making a mistake. What if I got caught? What if there was a perfectly normal explanation for everything, and I was just being paranoid? But the need to know outweighed my fear, and I stepped out from behind the desk. The hallway stretched out before me, dark and empty. The carpet muffled my footsteps as I made my way down the corridor. I passed door after door, each one identical with its peeling paint and tarnished brass numbers. Finally, I stopped in front of room 13. I don't know why I picked that one. Maybe because it felt unlucky, or maybe because it was the room farthest from the front desk. Either way, I found myself standing there, key in hand, heart pounding. I stood outside the door for what felt like hours, though it was probably only a few minutes. My mind raced with possibilities. What would I find inside? An empty room. A guest who'd been there all along, silently going about their business. Or something else? Something that might explain the strange atmosphere of the motel. Finally, I worked up the courage to knock. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the silent hallway. I held my breath, waiting for a response. Nothing. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. I pressed my ear against the door, straining to hear any sign of life within. But I couldn't hear a thing. Not even the hum of an air conditioner or the ticking of a clock. My hand hovered over the doorknob, the master key inches away from the lock. I was so close to solving the mystery, to finally understanding what was going on in this strange, silent motel. But something held me back. Fear? Respect for the rules? I'm not sure. But in that moment, I couldn't bring myself to open the door. Defeated and more confused than ever, I went back to the front desk and called my manager. The phone rang several times before he answered, his voice groggy with sleep. He seemed annoyed that I'd woken him up and told me not to worry about it. The guests pay for privacy, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Leave them alone. Then he hung up, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the oppressive silence of the motel. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention to everything around me. I noticed that the guest registry never changed. The same names were there, day after day, week after week. Names like John Smith, Jane Doe, Alan Brown, generic names that could belong to anyone, or no one. When I checked the credit card charges, they all went through like clockwork, every single day. The same amounts, the same card numbers. It was as if someone had set up an automated system and just left it running. But who? And why? I tried to talk to the other staff about it, but they just shrugged it off. The daytime receptionist, a middle-aged woman named Carol, seemed completely uninterested in my concerns. As long as the bills get paid, what does it matter? She said when I tried to bring it up. The maintenance guy, old Pete, just grunted and went back to fixing the perpetually broken ice machine. Their lack of curiosity baffled me. How could they not notice the strangeness that surrounded us? The eternal silence, the lack of visible guests, the unchanging routine that seemed to govern the motel. It was like they were sleepwalking through their jobs, unbothered by the impossibility of our situation. As the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, I found myself becoming increasingly isolated. The initial curiosity and concern I had shared with my coworkers gradually faded into a reluctant acceptance of the strange occurrences at the motel. I stopped trying to engage them in conversations about my suspicions, realizing that they either didn't believe me or didn't want to acknowledge the oddities that surrounded us. My withdrawal was gradual but unmistakable. I began to speak less during shift changes, offering only perfunctory greetings and necessary information. The break room, once a place of casual chatter and shared complaints about difficult guests, became a silent space where I would hurriedly eat my meals alone. My coworkers, sensing my change in demeanor, started to give me a wide berth, their eyes flickering away uncomfortably whenever I entered a room. As I retreated into myself, my mind became a constant whirlpool of unanswered questions and half-formed theories. During the long, quiet nights at the front desk, I found myself obsessively reviewing every strange incident I had witnessed, trying to piece together a coherent explanation. But the more I thought about it, the less sense it all made, and the more isolated I felt in my growing paranoia. The motel, once just a workplace, began to take on a more sinister aspect in my mind. The faded wallpaper and worn carpets seemed to hide secrets in their patterns. The constant hum of the vending machines became an ominous background noise, like the breathing of some slumbering beast. Even the familiar smell of cleaning products took on a cloying, almost suffocating quality. I began to feel as though the very walls were watching me, trapping me in a web of silence and secrets. The night shift, which I had once enjoyed for its peaceful solitude, now felt like a sentence, forcing me to confront the growing darkness in my thoughts. I found myself jumping at small noises, my eyes constantly darting to the shadows at the edges of the lobby. Sleep became elusive, even on my days off, as my mind refused to let go of the mysteries that surrounded me. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in late autumn, the kind of night where the chill in the air seems to carry whispers of the coming winter. The clock had just struck 2 a.m., and I was at my usual post behind the front desk. The lobby was silent, save for the soft hum of the heating system and the occasional rustle of leaves outside. I had been dozing lightly, my chin propped on my hand, lulled by the familiar quiet of the night. The dim light of the desk lamp cast long shadows across the room, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere. In my half-asleep state, the boundaries between reality and imagination seemed to blur, the mundane objects of the lobby taking on strange, distorted shapes in the corners of my vision. Suddenly, the shrill ring of the phone cut through the silence like a knife. I jerked awake, my heart leaping into my throat as I nearly fell out of my chair. My hands, clumsy with sleep, fumbled for the receiver, knocking over a cup of cold coffee in the process. As the dark liquid spread across the desk, soaking into guest registration forms, I finally managed to grab the phone. "Front desk, how can I help you?" I answered automatically, my voice rough and unsteady. I cleared my throat, trying to shake off the last vestiges of sleep, even as a sense of unease began to creep over me. What I heard on the other end of the line was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was a sound that defied description, a cacophony that seemed to come from the depths of some unimaginable hell. The noise hit me like a physical force, causing me to recoil and hold the phone at arm's length. It was a chorus of screams, but not human screams. These were the howls of creatures that should not exist, their voices layered and distorted into a symphony of agony and rage. The sound seemed to pulse and throb, rising and falling in waves that made my head spin and my stomach churn. At times, it would crescendo into a shriek so piercing I feared my eardrums might burst, only to drop suddenly into a low, guttural growl that I could feel vibrating in my chest. Underneath this hellish noise, barely audible but unmistakably there, were words, or at least sounds that approximated words. It was a language, if it could be called that, which seemed to slither and writhe in my mind, defying all attempts at comprehension. Each syllable felt wrong, as if the very act of forming these sounds was a violation of some fundamental law of nature. I stood there, transfixed by horror, unable to move or think. My body was rigid, my knuckles white as I gripped the phone. I wanted to hang up, to smash the receiver back into its cradle, but my muscles refused to obey. It was as if the sound itself had paralyzed me, forcing me to bear witness to this auditory nightmare. The torment seemed to last for an eternity, though in reality it was probably no more than 30 seconds. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. The abrupt silence was like a physical blow, leaving me gasping and disoriented. The absence of the noise was almost as terrifying as the sound itself had been, as if the world had suddenly been emptied of all substance. My hands were shaking violently as I lowered the phone, nearly dropping it in my distress. With trembling fingers, I managed to check the caller ID, dreading what I might see. The display showed a number I had come to fear, room 13. It was the same room I had tried to investigate months ago, drawn by reports of strange noises and unexplained phenomena. the same room that had been eerily silent when I knocked, showing no signs of occupancy despite the "Do Not Disturb" sign perpetually hanging on its door. And now, it had become the source of this inhuman cacophony. A part of me wanted to run, to flee from this cursed place and never look back. I imagined myself tearing off my name tag, bolting out the front door, and driving until the motel was nothing but a distant, nightmarish memory. But something kept me rooted to the spot. Perhaps it was a morbid curiosity, a need to unravel the mystery that had consumed my thoughts for so long. Or maybe it was fear, a deep, primal fear that whatever lurked in room 13 would not let me escape so easily. So I stayed, my heart pounding in my chest, my eyes darting between the phone and the dark hallway that led to the rooms. The rest of the night passed in a state of high tension. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind outside, sent a fresh jolt of adrenaline through my system. I kept expecting the phone to ring again, or for some unspeakable horror to emerge from the shadows. But nothing happened. The silence stretched on, becoming almost as unbearable as the demonic noise had been. I found myself longing for the mundane sounds of a normal night. A late check-in, a request for extra towels, anything to break the oppressive quiet. But the motel remained still, as if holding its breath in anticipation of some terrible event. As the first rays of dawn began to creep through the windows, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had made it through the night. When my replacement arrived at 6 a.m., I barely managed a coherent handover before bolting from the building. The cool morning air hit me like a shock, and I gulped it down greedily, as if I had been underwater for hours. I stumbled to my car, my legs weak and unsteady. As I drove away, I couldn't help glancing in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see some monstrous shape emerge from the motel. But there was nothing. Just an ordinary building, bathed in the soft light of early morning. Yet I knew that its ordinary appearance was just a facade, hiding secrets that defied explanation and horrors beyond imagination. That drive home was the longest of my life. Every shadow on the road seemed to hide a threat. Every unexpected sound made me flinch. By the time I reached my apartment, I was a wreck, physically and mentally exhausted. But even as I collapsed into bed, I knew that sleep would bring no respite. The memory of that inhuman chorus would haunt my dreams, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface of reality. But I came back the next night and the night after that. I told myself I was being silly, that it was just a prank call or a technical glitch. Maybe someone had hacked into the motel's phone system. Maybe I'd fallen asleep and dreamed the whole thing. I came up with 1,000 explanations, each more implausible than the last. Anything to avoid facing the truth of what I'd heard. Deep down, though, I knew better. That sound wasn't something that could be faked or imagined. It was real, and it had come from inside the motel. Inside a room that, by all rights, should have been empty. Since that night, I've been too scared to look inside any of the rooms. I do my job. I take the reservations that never change. I process the payments for guests I never see. But I don't ask questions anymore. I don't knock on doors or try to peek inside. Whatever is in those rooms, I decided I'm better off not knowing. Sometimes, late at night, when the silence is heaviest, I think I hear things. Whispers that seem to come from the walls themselves. Scratching sounds, like something trying to claw its way out or in. Once, I swear I saw a shadow move under one of the doors. A darkness deeper than the surrounding night that seemed to pulse with malevolent life. But I tell myself it's just my imagination. It has to be, because the alternative is too terrible to contemplate. I've thought about quitting, about walking away from this job and never looking back. But where would I go? What would I do? In the 3 years I've worked here, the outside world has moved on without me. My old friends have graduated, started careers, moved away. I've become a ghost in my own life, haunting this motel as surely as whatever inhabits its rooms. And honestly, part of me is afraid of what might happen if I try to leave. Would whatever is here let me go? Or would it follow me, bringing its unnatural silence and hidden horrors into the world beyond? So I stay, night after night, in this motel where the rooms are always full but never occupied. I've learned to live with the silence, to accept the strangeness as normal. But I never forget that behind each door lies a mystery, and possibly a nightmare. I don't know what's really going on at the Pinewood Motel. Maybe I don't want to know. But one thing's for sure, I'll never look at a no vacancy sign the same way again. Because now I know that sometimes an empty room can be the most terrifying thing of all. As I sit here at the front desk, watching the sun rise on another day at the Pinewood, I can't help but wonder about the future. How long will this go on? Will I spend the rest of my life here, a silent sentinel guarding secrets I don't understand? Or will there come a day when the truth finally reveals itself? Whatever happens, I know one thing for certain. The Pinewood Motel is not what it seems. And neither am I, not anymore. We're both trapped in this limbo of silence and secrets, waiting for something to break the spell. Whether that something will bring salvation or damnation, only time will tell. For now, I'll do what I've always done. I'll sit at this desk, answer the phone that never rings, and pretend not to notice the shadows that flicker at the edge of my vision. And I'll hope, with all my heart, that whatever lies behind those doors stays there. Because in the Pinewood Motel, silence isn't just golden, it's survival.